Thank you. It's really great to be here. And Andy invited me. And I first met him when we wanted to do some copywriter training for our team, but we felt we weren't really copywriters because we're writing patient information. But Andy said, "You're writing," so anyway, he came in and gave us the training, which was really, really helpful. And so it's very good to be here, but I feel I don't know much about marketing or advertising or whatever, but as a team, we do provide information to people in difficult situations. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how we provide our information and some of the challenges of doing that and the importance of knowing our audience. So I'll give you a bit of background about myself. I trained as a nurse in Coventry, and when I qualified, there was a choice between gynecology or cancer, and so I thought I'll go for the cancer. And so I started working on a cancer ward, and there it was quite eye-opening and very shocking. I was quite young to see people in really difficult situations, and I realised how frightened people are when they're diagnosed with cancer. One of the first things they know is whether they're going to live, about the kind of treatments they're going to have. And in the time when I was training, or just after I trained, the treatments were quite barbaric, like really nasty chemotherapy that would make people feel absolutely terrible, and be really, really sick and make them tired for a long, long time. Radiotherapy that was quite untargeted at that time and would cause really nasty, horrible side effects that people would have to live with for the rest of their life. So as time's gone on, treatments have improved, but having cancer treatment is still really, really difficult and can cause long-term side effects, which people have to then live with. And they're sometimes embarrassing. They might not want to admit that, or talk to their doctors even, that they've got bowel problems or sexual difficulties or whatever. So after I'd worked on the cancer ward, I then did a cancer nursing course at the Marsden Hospital, and I also worked at Charing Cross. So I worked with people with all different kinds of cancer, and some of the most shocking things that I had to deal with were maybe in the head and neck unit, where people would have, parts of their face removed and then reconstruction, so their physical appearance is also changed, and or people who had maybe bone cancer, young people who maybe have to have amputations, and then would have to live with that. So as a nurse, you can relate to people and you can care for them, you can give them their treatments, but in the health service, it's really difficult to give them the information that they need. Sometimes you're running around doing things, giving the treatments, and you can't always give the background to whether there's a choice of treatments or whatever. And sometimes people hear words that are really, like they're told that they've got maybe esophageal cancer, and they don't even know really what that is. So it's really important for us when we're writing the information to use common language like food pipe instead of esophagus and that kind of thing, but also to really explain things and give people information about their options. And I think people's lives are really turned around when they have cancer. They always have to live with the knowledge that it may come back. Many, many more people are cured nowadays because of the work of Cancer Research UK and other organisations. So the latest statistic is that 1 in 2 people will survive their cancer for more than 10 years. And cancer occurs more often in older people. So some people will die of other things anyway. But cancer cure rates are going up all the time. And some types of cancer are very curable and others are less likely to be cured. So I think when we're writing our information, we're always aware of the situations that people might be in. And when people come to our website to look for information, we're aware that they're very shocked and distressed, and they find it very hard to take in information. So we need to provide it as simply and as easily as possible and in as understandable a way as possible. So in the 90s, after being a nurse for a while, I went to work for a small cancer charity, and it was like a luxury in a way. People could phone up, and they would send letters at that time, and that was kind of before email really got going. So we would answer their calls. We had a whole bank of books because the internet wasn't really there, so we could answer their questions and spend time with them, we really realised how important it is for people with cancer to be able to get impartial, sort of impersonal information. And it was very nice to have the time and the resources to be able to answer their questions. We also produced booklets and fact sheets, but at that time they were written by doctors. The medical world was very doctor-oriented, and nurses weren't considered kind of clever enough to write booklets or fact sheets or whatever. So the booklets and the fact sheets were very medical speak and very hard to understand, very long sentences. And so gradually the nurses, we started, first of all, we would comment on the booklets, and then eventually we actually started being able to write them ourselves, which was actually quite a feat at that time. And then in the later 90s, we started working on a website, and again, we all worked together with our technical department to be able to do that, and had advice from the BBC. So that was the Cancer Backup website. And in 2007, I moved to Cancer Research UK. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our patient information. So we're the biggest cancer research organisation outside the USA, and I think the view that a lot of people have of us is that we're very scientific and kind of laboratory based, but actually we do a lot of trials on humans, patients, so to improve treatments, compare treatments and reduce side effects. And we do those trials, there's hundreds of them in clinics and hospitals, and some of them are international. And we also provide information for health professionals, political researchers and scientists, including statistics about cancer. And we've got more than 3,500 pages of patient information. So there's more than 200 different types of cancer. They're all different. As I mentioned, some are very curable and some are much harder to treat. So we provide information on all types of cancer, including rare cancers, and it's often hardest for people to get information about rare cancers. And so although from an organisational point of view, sometimes that content's not seen as very high value, for the person with that kind of cancer, it's really important that they can get it because they can feel more isolated and alone than people with the more common types of cancer. So we cover information about symptoms and diagnosis, treatments and side effects, and how to cope with cancer, both during treatment and with long-term side effects, and where to get support. And we have a clinical trials database, which is also the trials are written up in plain English so that people can look for a trial that's relevant to their kind of cancer. And our website has more than 3 million visits per month and more than 6 million page views, but that figure's going up and up and up the whole time. And more people are accessing the information with the newer kind of devices. So my statistics also disappeared, so I wrote them down earlier. I thought that might happen. So this trend has been going on and will continue, I'm sure. About more than 51% of people contact out or access the website by mobile devices, 32% by desktop, and then 17% by tablet. So these mobile devices are more and more important for people accessing the information. And we're actually rewriting all of our information at the moment. We have our old website's very link-heavy, very cluttered. It's hard sometimes for people to find what they need, and we're rewriting all of the information, splitting pages sometimes to make it easier to find information. And we've got a whole new design. So it's much cleaner, much easier for people to see exactly what they're looking for, and then the pathways through the information are really clear, so people can easily find what they want. And the aim of the information really is to help people know what they're going to be going through. So if they're told by their doctor that they need a particular test, then they'll know why it's being done, how it will happen, how they'll feel, how they can prepare, and how they'll feel afterwards. And we always use diagrams wherever possible to be able to show people really clearly what's going to happen. So they look a bit scary, and actually having these things done isn't very nice, but it's much better for people if they do know exactly what's going to happen to them. So we produce the information, as Andy said, we're a team of specialist cancer nurses. So we understand the patient perspective and what they're going through. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge the difficulties that people with cancer have, and when they're going through treatments and also after treatment. And we get quite a lot of pressure to make the information kind of more fun or cheerful or whatever, and actually it's about cancer. And so I think we have to kind of find a balance of not being too gloomy and being positive. And there is a lot of positive stuff. A lot of people are cured, and a lot of people can put the cancer behind them. But it is about having cancer, and people are scared. So in our information, we want to really let people know that we understand what they're going through, and have that kind of caring, supportive tone of voice. So we have a panel of specialist advisors who are various health professionals, surgeons or oncologists, and we also have a panel of patient reviewers, and they are really important to help us check the information for understandability, and they come in and attend focus groups to give us feedback on what they want from the information. And they also contribute their stories. And users of the website say that the stories are a really important part of the information, making it human, and so that they can kind of see what people go through, get tips from them about how they coped. We get a lot of feedback. We have a feedback form at the moment on each page, and more than 90% of the visitors give our pages 4 or 5 stars out of 5. It's mostly 5 out of 5. And we have our information approved each year by the Information Standard and the Plain English campaign. We use a lot of illustrations to explain things, and we also have videos for people about how they're going to go through radiotherapy maybe, or what it's like to have some of these tests, cystoscopy, and again the patient stories, which well, sometimes they make me cry. They're really sweet about people and how they cope with treatment and how they're getting on with life afterwards. So for us, it's a real challenge to translate this very complex medical information into helpful, understandable, plain English content. So we're reviewing research articles, national cancer treatment guidelines, and then trying to translate that into what a patient is going to experience. And the people coming to the pages for information, they're mainly people with cancer. That's 35%, relatives or friends are around 40%, and then other people, the general public, health professionals, journalists, and the general public. And we want to make the information understandable to as many people as possible, so we do try and keep the information simple, short, and concise and clear. And we're aiming to help people understand their situation, know how the cancer and treatments might affect them, understand the choices available to them, and enable them to make decisions where necessary. And our readers can be any age, so although most cancers occur in older people, so we've got to appeal to or make the information appropriate to every audience. More women than men use the website, which is common for most health websites. And as I said, many are in really difficult situations. They might just have been diagnosed, or they might be having treatment, and a lot of them are distressed or upset. So we want to be as supportive, caring, and empathetic as we can be. And so I think in where it said we want to make people feel emotion in our writing or feel a particular way, we don't want people to what the emotions we're wanting to people to feel are reassured and more confident about their future, and that they will be able to cope with what's going to happen to them. So that's the kind of aim of our writing. And the tone of our voice used to be very scientific and medical, with long words and long sentences. And then when we were redesigning the website, we talked a bit with this about Andy. Some of the styles that we tried were very, very short sentences, a really kind of basic information, and it just felt like Teletubbies tell you about cancer. So we really want to find a balance between presenting this scientific information and medical information, but in a way that's helpful and accessible, but not patronizing or as though we're speaking down to people. So the style's kind of authoritative and concise, and it's all the information is evidence-based, but it's also caring and supportive. And we want to demonstrate that we understand and empathise with the difficulties faced by people with cancer. We want them to feel really supported. And we don't avoid difficult topics like unpleasant side effects from cancer treatments. And we'll have a lot of information about coping with bowel problems or sexual difficulties. We have a whole section about end-of-life issues and dying. And in some ways it feels weird because our aim is to cure people of cancer, but we do acknowledge that some people die, and it's hard for them often to get information about what happens then. So we actually do cover how someone dies, and that page is one of the most looked at every single month, and it gets the best ratings. It's always 5 out of 5, and thousands of people look at it, and we get a lot of positive feedback about those as well. So people say that they're written in a really supportive way, so although it's very hard content to read, they also find it supportive. So just a few of the challenges that we face, and a lot of the readability tools don't like, or we find it hard to meet those readability criteria in our information because we have to explain medical terms like pleural mesothelioma, which is a cancer around the outer covering of the lung, mainly caused by asbestos, or we're explaining things like radical prostatectomy, removal of the prostate gland for prostate cancer, or terms like biological therapies. Even a lot of doctors aren't really sure exactly what that is and how it works and what the criteria are for biological therapy. So explaining these kind of complicated things can be really difficult. And also, using medical terms. We always use the plain English translation as well, like food pipe for esophagus. And we have to use very complicated drug names. We have information about all the different cancer drugs, and some of them have really unpronounceable names, and there's more and more and more of them coming out the whole time. So cancer's very exciting. It's a fast-changing world, but some of these words are really unpronounceable. So we always put how you pronounce them in there as well. And in our style guide, it says always to write as though you're talking to the person and use you, as though you're having a conversation with them to make it friendly. But there are certain situations, I think, where we have to be careful with that, such as in, we have a page on symptoms of esophageal cancer, and originally it was written as cancer can occur anywhere in your food pipe. So this would be for people coming to the symptoms page, and then they suddenly are told that cancer can occur anywhere in their food pipe. And that was really, it just feels too shocking and too direct. So in that situation, it's better to be less direct and say cancer can occur anywhere in the food pipe. Or as well, when we're describing how someone dies, it's too direct or shocking to write it as though you're speaking to the person, like your breathing will get slower and then stop, or whatever. It's the person's breathing, we always write it in that way. And contractions we're encouraged to use, but it can make the tone more informal, but sometimes that can feel really insensitive, like no one can tell you how long you'll live. That was on some of our statistics and survival pages for a while, but we've changed it now. Even just changing it to no one can tell you how long you will live, it just sounds more formal and less flippant. So it feels as though we're taking it seriously for the patients. And for each cancer type, we do provide survival information. And again, we were told people don't want all the emotional stuff or the explanations. They just want the facts. And so knowing how patients feel, we fought to have the context still in all of that information, and not just the facts about how long, the fact that maybe, 60% of people will survive their cancer for 5 years. We always have to put in the fact that the statistics relate to large groups of people and they can't predict what will happen to an individual person. And when doctors or nurses are giving that kind of information in a hospital, they'll always check out with somebody whether they want to read it or not, want to know their survival or not, because the first question people have often is, how long will I live? The statistics actually can't really tell them that. And also, if you read a really shocking statistic, like that you've got a 4% chance of living for a year after your diagnosis for some types of cancer, you can't unread that. And so I think on a website we have to give warnings where we're giving kind of hard to read or shocking information. If people might think that the survival is a lot better than it is, and then when they read that they can't unlearn it. So in a way we kind of want to protect people, but we also do want to give them the information if they want it. So on our survival pages we always give the context first, even though it pushes the important information slightly down the page, and we always give people somewhere else they can go to talk through issues. Sorry, my slides got converted, I think, so that's why they look a bit weird. So yeah, we're always wanting to support people and reassure them about cancer, and that can be a bit difficult. Sometimes we want people. Sometimes in the media, there's stuff that's quite shocking or difficult. So this was in the Mail online, bless them, and that was saying, how can you tell if you're suffering from this silent killer about ovarian cancer? So where we want to reassure people and make them feel that they are going to be able to live with whatever's going on or whatever, then I think for people with ovarian cancer, reading something like this, it kind of undoes all of that. It's really shocking. More terms to avoid is we often see melanoma, which is a very curable skin cancer, actually described as the most fatal type of skin cancer. Most are cured and diagnosed very early, and it's only if it spreads, which is in a small proportion of people, that it's much more difficult to treat. So we're trying to overcome the kind of misinformation that there is in the world as well. Or we've seen pancreatic cancers often described as the deadliest type of cancer. And again, it is very hard to treat for a lot of people, but then if you do get pancreatic cancer, like thinking of it as the deadliest type is not helpful. So we're trying to combat things like that, and also wording like lethal lung cancer. Lung cancer is hard to treat, but there are people who survive it and live for a long time. So just very quickly, our other services, we have an online forum where people can communicate with other people affected by cancer, and that's a really popular and gets a lot of very positive feedback. And we also have a nurse helpline, so if people with a very blurry nurse, so where people can phone up, so if they have questions about cancer or if there's information they want more detail on from the website, then they can phone and speak to a nurse confidentially and get the information that they need. So we at the moment in the information team, the patient information pages, we're actually working with copywriters who are not nurses, because we've got 3,500 pages to rewrite in 7 months, which is quite a challenge. And so in order to do that, we're working with a lot of other organisations and different teams, and we've also got, as I said, copywriters working with us to rewrite the information as well. So cancer is very interesting to cover, and I think it is challenging to provide information in a way that's supportive and feels positive, but not minimising what people go through and acknowledging the difficulties that they have. So I'll just leave you with the website address if you're interested in looking up more.